Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very beautiful day in Brisbane. 18 degrees and sunny today, 10 a.m. on the 19th of July 2023. Umesh Chandra welcoming you all to the show. Well, this morning, we had a breakfast with the Queensland Treasurer, and we'll bring to you some of the speeches by probably tomorrow. But it was wonderful to see such a strong growth in Queensland economy. And one of the things that he really mentioned there was the economy being riding on the back of the coal royalties. Now, of course, we know that coal is a big, dirty word right here in Queensland, but it's also one which generates a lot of revenue. For the threefold that they increase the royalties, because the companies are making good profit, and it is only fair that that profit is then passed on into the community. And that's what the Treasurer outlined today, and that he had actually given permission for another 2 coal mines to go ahead. So, all those campaign about Stop Adani and other one, I don't know where and how they stand. So the budget is in surplus this term, but outlook for the next budget, it will go in deficit. So there we are. But we'll bring you some facts and figures after we have another session with Minister Leon Leonard tomorrow night. But right now on the show, let's take a look at some of the news-making headline.
Victoria is facing widespread criticism for its decision to pull out of hosting the 2026 Commonwealth Games as the Games governing body races to find an alternative location for the event. Premier Daniel Andrews made the bombshell announcement yesterday, citing cost blowouts. The Commonwealth Games Federation in Britain says it was given only 8 hours' notice of the decision, and many athletes say they're gutted. No other Australian state is willing to take on the event. An Australian sailor who was rescued by a Mexican boat after being adrift at sea with his dog for 3 months has stepped onto dry land in Mexico. 54-year-old Tim Shattuck was spotted on his crippled catamaran by the crew of a tuna fishing boat almost 2,000 kilometres from land in the Pacific Ocean. He says he's grateful to be safe.
The health was pretty bad for a while. I was pretty hungry and I didn't think I'd make it through the storm, but now I'm really doing good.
And the Federal Education Minister, Jason Clare, will announce later today that all Indigenous students will be eligible for Commonwealth-supported places. The Minister will release an interim report from an expert panel looking at higher education reforms. The government agreed to 5 immediate recommendations, including lifting Indigenous student numbers. An ABC analysis of enrolment data shows the number of Indigenous students at Australia's universities is well behind population parity.
As was mentioned about Victoria pulling out of the Commonwealth Games, who does things like that? But I mean, to Daniel Andrews' way of thinking, it is if the state is already in red, and this is going to put an added pressure on the finances and the budget. So maybe it was a good call. In the next couple of news, we will just focus on that, why and how it happened and what is the reaction from the international community. This morning at the Treasurer's budget breakfast, the Treasurer, Queensland Treasurer announced, no, we're not taking it on, as Victoria has ditched the event.
15 months ago, Victoria was celebrating a sporting success.
The 2026 Commonwealth Games has been awarded to Victoria. Well done.
Today came an embarrassing back down.
The Games will not proceed in Victoria in 2026.
It is a comprehensive letdown for the athletes, the excited host communities.
Jake Benstead, who won bronze in judo in Birmingham last year, is among those devastated by the decision.
It's really hard for us athletes. We put everything into these kind of things, and for it to be taken away, it really does hurt.
Some of Australia's sporting greats have also spoken out.
I'm sure it's going to be a really disappointing decision for a lot of up-and-coming athletes.
From a sports perspective, I find it quite sad.
Staging the games has been a struggle from the outset. There was no host after several original bidders pulled out, citing the huge costs. Victoria stepped in with its ambitious plan to host the event across 4 regional cities.
It'll cost a substantial amount, but I don't see it as a cost. I see it as a profound investment.
But the Premier says the cost has now ballooned to more than double the original $2.6 billion price tag.
Frankly, $6 to $7 billion for a 12-day sporting event, we are not doing that.
The stated cost overruns, in our opinion, are a gross exaggeration.
The 2018 Gold Coast Games cost $1.2 billion and last year's event in Birmingham totalled $1.8 billion. Commonwealth Games Australia says the Victorian government ignored recommendations to move events to purpose-built stadiums in Melbourne to bring down costs.
This is a terrible decision for Australia.
That's a decision made by the Victorian government.
The opening ceremony was meant to be held here at the MCG in less than 1,000 days. Now it's not clear where or if it'll even be held. Every other state has ruled out taking on the Games, and the organising committee's conceded it'll be a challenge to find a new host. Bridget Rollison, ABC News, Melbourne.
The decision has hit host communities in regional Victoria hard. They're concerned about what the decision means for sporting facility upgrades and social housing projects. And local athletes say they've lost an opportunity to perform on the world stage in front of their home crowds.
When Alessia McCaig heard the 2026 Commonwealth Games were coming to town, she lobbied for her sport to be held locally.
I mean, I don't think it was all my letter that made it happen, but yeah, it was definitely a little push.
With the Games now next, she fears Bendigo's rundown facilities are here to stay.
It would have been really good to have an indoor velodrome in more of a central area in Victoria.
The state government says planned upgrades to regional sporting facilities will still go ahead, but that's cold comfort to the clubs keen to host the world's best.
It meant so much for us, particularly as one of Australia's best bowlers, Aaron Wilson, was a member of this club, and we were so looking forward to having not only Aaron, but all the best bowlers in the world come here.
The Games were initially seen as an opportunity to help regional communities bounce back after the pandemic, floods and cost of living pressures.
Daniel Andrews and Jacinta Allen have humiliated Victorians. They've betrayed regional Victoria.
Now, with the injection of tourism dollars running away, it's a disappointment to some.
Disappointment in terms of our ability to showcase our community and the other regional communities to a global audience.
It's a very uneasy time for many in our industry.
The need for athlete accommodation was seen as an opportunity to build cheap social housing in regional Victoria. The state government has vowed to honour that $1 billion commitment, but advocates say housing is needed now.
I've been here 15 years and this is the highest amount of homeless people I'm seeing presenting through our doors at the moment.
But for the athletes, it's the competition they'll miss.
A bit of like a pride moment, obviously, and yeah, to have all of my friends and family around to support me and watch me in the crowd.
Laura Mayers, ABC News, Ballarat.
The shock decision has raised questions about the very future of the Games. Here's Mary Guerin.
Victoria took on the Commonwealth Games almost as palliative care. So has this decision sounded their death knell? Nobody else wanted these Games, and the previous event got flicked to Birmingham after Durban dropped out because of the costs. What happens now that one of the Games' biggest cheerleaders kicks it to the curb? Australia has hosted more Games and is more successful at the Games than any other nation. So as existential body blows go, this is a doozy. Mega sporting events are increasingly expensive, hard to justify. But on top of that, the relevance of the Commonwealth Games has always been tied to the relevance of the Commonwealth itself. And in the wake of the death of the Queen and some countries questioning their membership, there's never been a more challenging time to fight for Games based on the centuries-old institution. The Games have occupied a unique space in our sporting landscape. Vital prep for the Olympics, a chance for rising stars to stake their claim and veterans to stage a farewell on a major stage. And they've been the Olympics for beloved sports like netball and squash and lawn bowls. But who can afford to carry on the tradition?
Well, joining me now for his analysis of the day's developments is our state political reporter, Richard Willingham. Rich, the initial estimate was $2.6 billion. How could it have been so incredibly underestimated?
Well, Tam, I think that's the $4 billion question. How do we go 15 months ago from $2.6 billion to more than $6 billion in the last couple of weeks? It really goes to the government's credibility and their competency in doing their homework, their basics. They say that they worked with Ernst & Young on this, and now they've come back and said these figures are so much bigger. Now, I think it's fair for Victorians to ask what other projects might be suffering the same fate. We've got so many projects with billions of dollars out there. So the government's going to continue to face the heat over this. It's going to continue to be attacked as an embarrassment, and we still don't actually know how much the government is going to pay, how much taxpayers are going to pay for actually breaking this contract.
When the Premier spoke to the media today, he said that he's had to make a whole heap of tough decisions in his time, but that this was not one of them. Yet a turnaround of this magnitude is a big deal, isn't it?
It is, and I think today we saw the Premier at his classic best in terms of delivering bad news. I think there's several elements to this. One is that this game did have the potential to be problematic, trying to deliver all these projects in a short period of time with an immovable deadline. But I think the real key is the state of Victoria's budget. We're in a parlous position. Debt's going to ratchet up to $171 billion in 3 years' time, so they couldn't afford to spend any more, and this has enabled them to get out of this. They're still spending $2 billion on some projects, but they've got longer to do it. But the question about these figures are going to continue. The Commonwealth Games themselves said they don't believe these figures. For example, Melbourne could have hosted these games. The Premier said that's going to cost $4 billion. But we held the games in 2006. The stadiums already exist. And just last year, Birmingham held the games and it only cost them $1.8 billion. So something doesn't add up and those questions will continue. And that's going to be a big political problem.
Richard William, thank you.
So there you are, the SOC decision, and many community organisations are often faced with this situation, whether to go ahead with big iconic events or find or just pull the plug as they reckon and pay up the penalties. Well, tough decision for Daniel Andrews there, but he's made it. What is the international community think about that?
The 2026 Commonwealth Games are in doubt.
That's it? Is it over? What's going to happen?
No one expected it to be the Victorian Premier delivering a stunning backflip.
Claiming the event is not, quote, value for money.
Premier Dan Andrews ne आयोजन की लागत में
Clearly a huge amount of anger around as well. Commonwealth officials here in London say that they were effectively blindsided by this.
It's the way that they cancelled the Games that is the issue. The Commonwealth Games Federation said they were given 8 hours notice.
Well, I put it in the bombshell category, actually, just in a state of shock and beyond disappointed.
Victoria's withdrawal places the future of the Games in doubt, given the challenge of finding replacement hosts 3 years out from the event.
It's left the organising committee fuming and scrambling for a replacement.
Well, let's bring in Isabella and Steph now. Isabella, that's a taste of how people were reacting. This news broke in Australia while you would have been asleep, but it clearly has been a shock for the UK to wake up to.
That's right, Lisa. There's been surprise, disappointment and frustration. We heard from Team England, who say their athletes already had their sights on the 2026 event, and this is hugely unsettling. We've had some other competitors who say they'd be happy to attend a smaller or scaled back event as long as it goes ahead. Now, the Commonwealth Games Foundation is headquartered here in London. The Chief Executive has been speaking with British media and has been highly critical of the Victorian government's decision, saying that they've over-exaggerated the costs and that they wish they had come back to them to negotiate a different or cheaper model. Now, of course, they're frantically trying to find a new city to host the 2026 Games. There's some speculation here that the English city of Birmingham, who hosted the 2022 Games, might do back-to-back games. The Scottish First Minister has said that they would consider taking on a portion of the Games in a multi-city approach, but these are all very early conversations. The UK's Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has said that he believes it should be Australia who work out a solution with the Commonwealth Games Foundation. Now, as you just said, there's no states who have put their hands up and said that they want to take this on. So there are certainly many people here in the UK and around the world who are questioning the viability of these games. Largely over the last few decades, it has been hosted mostly in the UK or by Australia. And there are some here who say that the games have become too big and too expensive.
Well, let's bring it back home.
The games have become too big and too expensive, and of course, as Rishi Sunak from UK is saying that Australia's problem, Australia should solve that problem and work it out. I'm no doubt there will be some solution coming out of this shock announcement today, and we will just keep you posted and see how things go. Well, the major solution at this point in time is also around the referendum. Let's take a look at that story.
An ancient ceremony to cleanse and welcome.
We're enriched by celebrating our history in this country, and will be enriched further by acknowledging it in our Constitution.
Those against the voice say it's akin to smoke and mirrors.
This Prime Minister has said, trust us, we'll give you the detail after the vote, and that's not good enough.
All Australians will receive a pamphlet in the mail ahead of the referendum. The Yes campaign focusing on principle, writing, vote yes for unity, hope, and to make a positive difference. Adding it's about recognition, listening, and making practical progress.
I think this is a unifying proposal. This is not about race, this is about Indigenous people, our special connection to this place.
The No campaign says it's too ambiguous, writing if you don't know, vote no, adding it would be risky, unknown, divisive and permanent.
One day the Prime Minister's saying this is a very minor changes to the Constitution, then the next day it's about it has to be teeth, it has to do things.
The Electoral Commission can't edit or fact-check the contents. Its role is restricted to delivering the information to every household before the referendum.
We still don't know when the vote will be held, the Prime Minister saying sometime between October and December. Mr Albanese wants a short official campaign, hoping that voters won't be fatigued when they head to the ballot box. That hasn't stopped the Yes and No teams who have been campaigning in earnest across the nation. Dan Borsha, ABC News, Canberra.
On behalf of the Australian Labor Party, I commit to the Uluru Statement from the Heart.
We will ultimately end up with another layer of bureaucracy.
The gap isn't closing fast enough.
No, we don't support this proposal. There's not enough detail about it.
The Prime Minister of this country, the Labor Prime Minister, has not even got the courage to come out and say that he wants a treaty.
Since May last year, federal politicians have been arguing vocally and sometimes bitterly about a proposed referendum for Indigenous recognition through a voice to Parliament. The argument has gone through several phases. There have been constitutional questions.
Our Constitution is not something to be toyed with lightly.
Moral questions.
Indigenous babies born with healthy birth weights, not on track. Finishing year 12, not on track. The voice can help.
I am a great believer in the principle of equality of citizenship.
And also some questionable questions.
Will the Reserve Bank need to consult with the Voice before making a decision on interest rates?
The Yes case and the government have been arguing that the Voice will both change nothing and be transformative. Mirroring this, the No case has argued both that the Voice is tokenistic and will wreak havoc on our systems of government. And today, all those arguments have been crystallised in the formal Yes and No cases written by politicians and to be sent out to millions of households by the Australian Electoral Commission.
Well, it's a simple proposition of do you support in recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders as Australia's first peoples, the recognition bit. And then it's about then listening through a voice on matters that directly affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And we know that you get better outcomes when you listen.
The Prime Minister says he is unlikely to announce a date for the referendum until at least September, so we are in for a couple of months of unofficial campaigning now.
So we are in for a few months of unofficial campaigning. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to go to international news. And Manali, the hill districts of India has been hit by floods. So has been Delhi and other parts of India as well. As you can see, the outflow of the creek there in Manali, the Skulu and Manali, the foothills of the Himalayas, and moving up to Rohtang Pass, and the highest mountain road built in the world. And so that is the gateway to that area. Very, very hilly country, a beautiful country, I must say, beautiful part of India. And it's devastating to see that kind of floods all there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to go to our functions and events.
Phantasmagorically magical. This is for you both.
Girl, she got married to a boy like you. She'd kick you out if she ever knew about all the you tell me that you do. Dirty, dirty boy. You know everyone is talking on the scene. I hear them whispering about the places that you've been and how you don't know how to keep your business clean.
Namaste, hi and hello to everyone. This is Geeta Kapoor. I'm coming to Brisbane, Australia on the 22nd of September and to Melbourne on the 24th of September 2023 to witness some great talent on a wonderful platform called Australia's Great Dancers. This event is brought by Shaurya Entertainment and I can't wait to see the talent that it brings there. See you soon. Lots of love. God bless.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for you in this segment today. It's been wonderful having your company. Until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us. We'll see you then.